Welcome to Healing the Witch Wound Global Online Summit, walking the bridge home to our sacred sovereign truth. Feeling her fear connects me to my fear. Feeling her strength connects me to my strength. Feeling the resonance of her voice connects me to the resonance of my voice. Feeling her tears of grief connects me to my tears of grief. Feeling her fire connects me to my fire. May you too connect with all parts of yourself as we walk our individual and collective paths home. And I'm your host, Eimear Stassin, and I'm really delighted to welcome today's expert speaker, Sarah Robinson. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Eimear. Hi.
Lovely to have you here.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. And I'll say a few words about you, Sarah. Sarah is a yoga and meditation teacher based in Bath in the UK, which was once named after goddess, the ancient Roman town of Aquae Sulis. Hopefully I've pronounced that right. Her background is in science. She holds a master's in science in psychology and neuroscience and has studied at Bath, Exeter and Harvard universities. She's practiced yoga since the age of 7, weaving in her love of all things myth, magic and yoga, and she's passionate about creating magic to inspire and transform herself and others. And her 2 books, Yoga for Witches and recently published Yin Magic, were both published with Womancraft Publishing. And you can find out more about Sarah on her website, sentiayoga.com. And your topic today, Sarah, is the healer and the hearth. Oh, I'll say that again. The healer and the hearth fire, stories of magic and power. Where would you like to start with that gorgeous topic?
It sounds lovely. I have to completely admit that that literally just came to me yesterday. I was like, what should we call it? And I think I will admit to you secretly, and everyone listening secretly, that I'm working on book number 3 that is very much focused around the hearth fire and about the magic of the hearth. And I think I just had that word in my mind. So I was thinking how lovely a word that is for a start, and how the hearth fire is the thing that draws people together. So our hearth fire is this lovely summit. So that's our hearth fire drawing us all together. So it just seemed like the right word at the time, but I stand with it. I think it's still the right word.
Yeah, but there is something so warming. It's like, come to the hearth fire. Everything will be okay.
Yes, let's all gather around and let's tell our stories. And I think certainly over the last few years, I trained to be a yoga teacher, which I love. I've been doing it for so long, practicing that teaching just felt really, really the right thing to do. And it's beautiful and I love it. And I love the guided meditations in, that kind of Hindu history of Vipassana meditations and Buddhist meditations. And they're very beautiful, but I can't claim them as my own. I'm not from Hindu lands. I'm not native to the area. And I think I've slowly kind of working towards actually my Celtic and my Norse and my Anglo-Saxon heritage. So my version, I suppose, of those meditations is storytelling. And that's what we used to do. We used to gather around the fire and tell the stories. And it's taken me a long time to find my way here. But as with all journeys, it took exactly as long as it needed to take. But now, I'm connecting to stories in the fact that I'm writing the books. I'm connecting to the stories of the witches and of the drawing together, and then using story as a way to connect people in a different kind of meditation. So a story journey meditation. So just finding my way with stories and bringing people around the hearth fire.
Yeah, I love that, and I can feel tingles when you talk about your journey, that part that you've shared of going out, to exploring other traditions, and then coming back into your Celtic roots, your roots where you are now, which I fully resonate with. That's been a big part of my journey as well. Would you like to share any more about that journey and your connection to your Celtic roots and the witches? Quite a big...
Yes, of course I would. Let me just think about forming a sensible sentence. yeah, the journey's been fantastic. I've always wanted to write books, and kind of weave books together, and kind of finally when it all came together, meeting wonderful Lucy and Womancraft, I think the process of writing the books was part of my process, part of my journey. So it's really been really special to kind of to put it all into paper form. And even in the books you'll see, so Yoga for Witches, this was the first one, and that was the one most based within sort of Hindu and yogic philosophy. And then Yin Magic is starting, it's quite, because you'll see it now, it's kind of, it's got the yogic roots, but then they're also starting to move towards Celtic ideas, about the idea of the Celtic cauldrons and kind of Celtic myths and Celtic goddesses. So it's sort of slightly turning, like blending into the Celtic. And then the next one is very much based around kind of my native lands. And yeah, part of the journey, I mean, there's lots of strands, as there always is with journeys, I suppose, but there's the writing. I did a priestess of the goddess training at Glastonbury, which was a fantastic journey for connecting to the land. This land around here, specifically kind of Somerset and Wiltshire, is where all of my family are from. So it was really nice to kind of connect to that. It inspired me to kind of go back a bit further with my heritage. We lost a lot of family in the war, so there was a lot of kind of dead ends, and no one really knew, you know, whose people's parents were, and you know, there were kind of orphan children and things, and it was all kind of a bit of a mess. But modern science is amazing, so I did the little DNA test thing, and so my grandmother's parents, we believe, were Celtic gypsies. So they were the fortune tellers, the story weavers, the travelers, and it all just sort of came together, and you're just like, of course that's what it was. And it's that idea of kind of remembering and connecting to things perhaps you knew on some level, but it's lovely also to find those little pieces of the puzzle, little pieces of the story that kind of bring it all together. And yeah, so the books have been a journey for me as much as they may be for anyone else as well. So that's been really lovely. And I think all of that kind of added together to me finding, and obviously the journey continues, but me finding my kind of, my place within the story, my place within my Celtic roots, and delving deeper into that history, I suppose, and learning all the time, which is very exciting.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. What a beautiful journey. And gypsy storytellers, of course, as you said that too, I'm thinking, of course, yeah, you know, you're onto your third book of telling and weaving stories, and that's so beautiful. Such a lovely connection.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, as you were sharing that, then when we gather around the hearth fire with the stories, what is it that we need to remember or heal when your topic is around like stories of magic and power?
I think, I mean, obviously this gathering of the hearth fire has happened since, you know, our existence as humans. We would have gathered around this light and this heat. And I've already forgotten what the question was. What was the question again?
And that's it. It's just mesmerizing. Into the flames of the fire.
That's it. I've got fire and I've forgotten.
It's around just gathering around the hearth fire.
Yeah.
To the light, to the heat. And what is it that we need to either remember or heal?
Yes. So since the beginning of time, we've gathered around that hearth fire, and since the beginning of time, it's been women around that hearth fire. So, you know, we did the cooking, we did the beer brewing, which is just something I've kind of been delving into recently when I'm at the hearth thing. It all used to be women doing all the brewing of the beer, the wine, the preserving of the food, everything that happened around the hearth. All the stories, all the information, the knowledge that got passed down, it seemed to happen around the hearth. And then, you know, somewhere kind of the late medieval period, things started to, we started to get pulled away from it, I suppose. There was this idea that these women around the hearth, these women who were in charge of both cooking and also those women who knew about herbs and all the herbs, and somewhere in the mind of perhaps some fearful and paranoid men, mainly, there was this distrust that kind of was planted there. Like, they have the power, and there was extreme power there. They could nourish, they could heal, but they could also poison you if they wanted to. So there was that kind of that distrust there. And so then it became the wicked witch with the cauldron, who, could do terrible things with that cauldron. Or there was the men who saw, oh, hang on, brewing beer, there's money in that. We're gonna make that a men thing now. And it still kind of is a male dominated industry. It's tipping the other way now a little bit. So it's like, everyone got scared and they kind of just started pulling bits apart, and it kind of started to fall apart a bit, and people got separated from this idea of having a knowledge of the natural world, the animals, the seasons, the herbs. Organizations such as the church came in, and they were like, oh no, none of this connecting to animals, none of this connecting to the moon, none of this connecting to her. And so it got painted as this thing that was to be distrusted, and the women themselves got painted as distrusted. And so it all got kind of pulled apart, which is just incredibly sad. We made a mess of it. But luckily, from those scattered pieces, now we can bring everything back to the hearth fire. So as with all things, I suppose things have fallen, but we can bring them back. So all hope is not lost.
Yeah. That's gorgeous. And there is a very, in the sadness and the grief of all that has been lost, then I feel so much hope listening to you of that we can reconnect and we can gather again around the fire and begin to remember what it is that we need to remember.
Yeah, like the hearth fire itself, it can burn down, it can die, the embers can die, but we can build it back up again. We can bring the kindling back in and start the spark again. So hope is important. So we can relight the fire. It can be done.
Yeah. That's gorgeous. Yeah, thank you for that. And in relation to stories then and magic, are there any particular stories that we need to remember or that you have come across that feel potent for this topic, I guess, of healing the witch wound?
I'm trying to think of one that's kind of short, and it's funny because I spoke about the beer brewing as one of those just funny tales about how the beer brewers were all women, and a kind of now it's completely opposite. And there's this really potent image that we all still have of the woman stirring the giant cauldron, and she'll have the cats around her to keep the mice and the rats away, and she'll have the broom in the corner, because everyone had a broom in the corner. But that whole image of the woman stirring her potion then became this image of the witch, because the witch was every woman. It was every woman who knew how to cook, how to bring herbs. So it was just it was everyone. I've wandered off topic a little bit there, but my point was
so related.
The beer story was lovely, and the ale wives were the women who stirred the beer. But then from the beer, I've also ended up with some really wonderful tales about whiskey, and I love whiskey. I think there's something strangely magical about the kind of the smoke and the fire and the peat, and it used to be called the water of life, and that kind of golden colours. And this is a really, really short story, but there's this tale that amongst the islands of Scotland, where the fairy folk live, the queen of the fairies, she thought, women on the islands of Scotland, they've got it hard, they've got it tough. What I'm going to do is I'm going to invite them to come and join me underneath my fairy mound, and we're going to have a beautiful party. So she sent out invitations to all the women. She sent invitations out on boats and on birds and on creatures to all the women of the Northern Islands of Scotland to come and join her for a party. And some of the women were a little bit distrustful, not sure. But on the day of the party, many women arrived, and they were led into this fairy mountain, and those beautiful chandeliers and beautiful banquet tables. And she sat them all down, and she said, I want you to ask us, the fairy folk, anything. Ask away. Let us share our knowledge with you to make your lives easier, because it's tough being a woman on these kind of harsh lands. So they kind of chatted away for a bit, and they had this lovely talk, and they had this beautiful banquet. And then she picked up this beautiful flagon of amber liquid, and she poured out a little dram for everyone in a beautiful glass, cairn glass. And they all took a sip of this water of life. And suddenly they had no more questions, because they knew everything. They had been given this wisdom of the fairies via this beautiful whiskey. And they ended their party, and they went on their way. And these women were the wise women then of Scotland. They knew all about the Fae and the other world, and they spread their wisdom that had been passed to them via the fairies and this beautiful banquet with whiskey.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I realized I'm sinking back into my chair, just like,
tell me a tale.
So lovely. It's like the most beautiful story. And Ishkabaha, the water of life, and whiskey.
The water of life, I mean, it seems to fall into almost every culture. There's a water of life of some kind. I think in like Iceland and Norway, it's the aquavita, which is an incredibly strong spirit, which I'm not quite so keen on, I must admit. But it's this idea that there's life, there's history, there's time within these spirits. And I think whether you drink alcohol or not, I think you can appreciate that kind of that time and love and the elements that go into making this as this kind of alchemical kind of potion in its own way.
Yeah, that's really gorgeous. And then in drinking it, that we have the wisdom then,
Yeah.
And that, as you say, whether people drink alcohol or not, it's the whole symbology and the metaphor of that, of this the wise women taking the drink and then having all the answers within us.
Yes, exactly. And also that kind of that idea that women, I think we have this natural intuition, this connection to what you might call the other world, you might call the Fae, and we have that intuition if we allow ourselves to connect to it. And I think that is, again, back in time, something some of us, we get disconnected from, and just these things, this intuition, this empathy, this connection that we have within us always, but we just sometimes just need to reconnect to it.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And that's a huge part of my hope for this summit, is that speaking with people like yourself is to help people reconnect and remember and regather around the hearth fire, to take this time, because it can take time. It can happen in an instant, or it can just it'll naturally happen over time.
Absolutely,
when we allow it.
Yes, exactly. I think it took me a very long time to get to this point where I am now. And I think there were many years where I wasn't aware of what was missing. I wasn't aware of what I needed to connect to. And then suddenly it's like a light's turned on, and suddenly the possibilities just kind of lay out before you. And it's kind of like,
Gorgeous. And I wanted to ask you as well about beliefs and potentially superstitions that may exist, that you're aware of in storytelling, or as we gather around, as we're stirring our cauldron.
Yeah, I think I love, again, with this idea of the hearth fire and the cooking and the superstitions we have around food. I think food is something that connects all of us the world over, and in that kind of seeking of connection, I love this idea of us all having these kind of little traditions, little superstitions about food. And one that comes up a lot, which I love. I mean, there's a couple. I mean, in England specifically, we love setting fire to things. So we'll set fire to our Christmas pudding. You know, we love setting fire to food, which I think is just hilarious. The French are very good at that too. You know, the crepes and things they set fire to. I love that. But also hiding things in food, which really makes me laugh. So again, the Christmas pudding. So, you know, in England, we love to, you know, hide the sixpence and the bean in the Christmas pudding. And you kind of, I think the sixpence means you're going to be rich, and the bean means you're the Lord of Misrule. And I think there's luck and all sorts. But then in searching for that, you know, I found it's either Scotland or Ireland, and maybe you can help me with this one. So colcannon, the food, which I love, the mashed potato with the greens in, the Celts used to hide things in their colcannon, which I thought was really sweet. So they used to hide the sixpence and things in colcannon, which is really, really cute. So this idea of hiding lucky charms in food, I just find utterly adorable. You know, playing with our food. Turns out we used to love doing that. But I just love those little connections. So, you know, there's kind of different cultures that hide, you know, good luck charms in food, and different cultures who'll set fire to food, and then traditions of bringing certain foods over the threshold of a new home or for a new year. And it's this lovely universal energy of that excitement, I suppose, around food and hiding things, but also just this idea of just nourishment. And we kind of bring nourishment in terms of physical food, but also that nourishment of bringing people together, and this ceremony, this ritual of food, and that idea that these things are all kind of imbued with magic, even though, you know, often we'll have our beans on toast or whatever, and we're not really thinking that that's a particularly magical thing to do. But in reconnecting to those old stories, old superstitions, we remember, oh yes, my grandmother used to she used to throw salt over her shoulder, or she used to steep certain herbs in tea, or she used to hide things in certain food. So it's that kind of, it's a very, I suppose it's a very personal way to connect to the stories, in that we all have our own little memories and traditions from our families. But also a very beautiful way just to find magic in the everyday, in those little kind of things we might think as being quite mundane, and actually there's magic to be found every day. And maybe that's part of the remembering, is just finding those little funny superstitions, little magical things that we used to do and still do around day-to-day things.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. And it reminds me of what we would have at Halloween time or Samhain time, was the barn brack, and there'd be a ring hidden inside, and whoever got the ring, you know, would be, I think it was first to marry or something, you know, so we'd all be fighting over who would get the ring.
Yeah, there's so many. It's funny, at Halloween, it seemed, especially kind of early Victorian times, that was the time that every woman was like, right, who am I going to marry? So it's, you know, the apple bobbing was to do with finding who you get married, that peeling the apple to make the initials with the skin. There's something to do with an apple in a mirror. And everyone's probably got a tale from Halloween about seeing who you're going to marry, because that was the thing. But it was kind of fun, because everyone could do these little kind of fun games that were all based somewhere way back in sort of real divination of witches and cunning folk. So it was that kind of, again, kind of this kind of fun, light-hearted party game that was actually based in something much more ancient. So again, that idea of kind of bringing it to day and connecting to it in a way.
Yeah, and when you say finding the magic in the everyday, I think is really, really beautiful, in how we can take that forward as our mantra, really. Way of living.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it was a way of living for so long. Some of the first kind of cuneiform tablets found in ancient Mesopotamia, ancient Greece, you know, they were spells, there were potions, they were magic. To them was just part of everyday life. It was just a given that there was magic, there were charms to be said, there was potions to be made, there was kind of magical incantations. So once upon a time, and even, you know, up to kind of, you know, through kind of Roman and Greek times, and then up to kind of medieval times, it was just, you know, things like charms and incantations and spells. They were just magic existed, and it just wasn't a question. It did. And yeah, remembering that magic exists, I think, that's a good start, isn't it?
Yeah, and it also brings, listening to you speak, and also how you're sharing these stories. It's bringing the fun back in, to what has been a dark, dark time in our history, and that we can rebrand the word witch, even with your hat.
I love it.
Your hat on your tree there, and the photo you've given for this summit. It's just brings so much fun to this.
It's a really good point, actually. It's this idea, and it connects to lots of things that I do, including my yoga work. Just because a ritual or a practice is fun, it doesn't mean it's not powerful. It doesn't mean it's not serious. So that's great, for one. But also, the burning times were so horrific, so horrible, and simply being yourself, being a healer, a woman with knowledge, was such a spectacularly dangerous thing to just be yourself. So in a way, now in our kind of, for the most part in the Western world, that freedom to share that knowledge and to celebrate that knowledge, to have those rituals, have those beautiful feasts and festivals, is our way of saying, no, you couldn't burn us all. You can't eradicate magic. You cannot eradicate us. And we will celebrate. We will bring our strength and our power, and we're going to have a damn fine time doing it. Thank you very much. So I think it's part of the process. This is serious stuff, but also it's joyful stuff. It's powerful, gorgeous, wonderful stuff, as magic should be. So it's great to have fun with it, because it's really, feels like we're coming to this new age of taking everything and mourning the losses, but also allowing ourselves now to celebrate the fact that we can be witches. We can connect to this magic without, for the most part, without fear of persecution.
Yeah, I'm so happy you've underlined that, because it's so important to bring with the magic. And for me, that's a huge part of the magic in the everyday, is able to have fun and bring some light to this, like the light of the hearth fire.
Yes. Yeah. It's tough looking back. It really is. It was such a long period of time. The very first witch persecutions must have been kind of 1300s or something, and then it's run through. I checked, actually, because I knew someone from my hometown, Portsmouth, was one of the last people to be imprisoned for witchcraft, and that was the 1930s. So that was within many people's lifetimes. And she got jailed. I remember this story. I was probably told this story. She was a medium, and she connected to a ship. It was, I guess, one of the world wars or some sort of battle. I forget now. I'm not very good with dates, but a ship had sunk, and she knew about it because she had connected to some of the spirits, the souls of the boat. And it was that funny thing of that kind of, they didn't, the authorities didn't quite believe her. So they were like, oh, she must have had some connection with it. But, they couldn't believe that this could actually be a skill, that she could have done that. But also they imprisoned her for it at the same time. So it's that kind of odd thing where they don't want to believe it, but they're also punish you for it anyway. And I think, she was released, and it was okay in the end. But she did go to prison for her talent, for her knowledge. And it could have been used for something fantastic, or it could have been quashed, and they quashed it. So that's a hell of a long time. That's many hundreds of years that women have been punished for, and men as well, and they've been punished for their knowledge, for their skill. And it's sad, and it's also like, what a waste of knowledge and skill. And in the last kind of 30 years or so, I suppose people have been writing books, looking at the kind of the witch trial transcripts and things, because we're finally thinking, hang on, maybe these witches had something that was actually really important that we should have listened to, because no one was listening to them. Nobody cared. They just wanted to dunk them into the water or whatever. And it just, that loss of knowledge is hugely sad, and that skill. So even now, just kind of looking back on, you know, just the horror of it all and the loss of knowledge it is incredibly sad. So yes, I suppose I'm trying to bring the joyful side of it, but it is hard not to also just be just really saddened by the whole mess of fear and ridiculous biases and, you know, gender issues.
Yeah, and like 1930s, you know, that's incredible.
It's ridiculous. And it was just that, it's such a weird thing. It was a very much, and actually this, I mean, I think women are still kind of prone for this today. It's the very much damned if you do, damned if you don't. You know, when there were swimming witches, if you sunk, obviously you were in trouble. If you floated, you were in trouble too. So it's just that you couldn't do right. And then, you know, when the accused witches did speak up in court, and there's great stories from some of the witches who were just like, yeah, I'm an effing witch. What are you going to do about it? I hang out with the devil and have a great time doing it. And they were like, oh, she's clearly mad. And it's like, you're accusing her of being a witch and she's telling you and you still think she's crazy. So she was either a witch or she was crazy, so she couldn't win that one. And then it's just, and, you know, now it's kind of, you're damned if you speak up, you're damned if you don't speak up. And it's kind of that frustration, I think, kind of runs through it as well, where it's just like, I'm sure some of these women accused of witches were just like, just forget it, you know, it's just done, isn't it? It's, there's no way out of this, which is a pretty desolate situation.
As you're speaking, what I see you doing is that in the darkness of what's happened, as you're bringing that fun through, and through your words and the books that you have written and are writing, it's bringing this up to the light and also giving others permission to go there too. Yeah, I think there's to remind people as they're coming to this, as they're learning, as they're growing, you know, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to wander off onto, you know, things that aren't right for us. Maybe we might find things that work and things that don't. And I think it's really useful. Again, we were talking at the very beginning about how people find it very hard to rest and be still. And I think sometimes we also find it very hard to make mistakes and get things wrong and not be discouraged or not feel that we need to be getting things perfect because this is important, this is powerful, and oh gosh, I can't mess this up. But it's all part of that journey. And in yoga, we call it our dharma, and it's the path we were meant to walk. And as long as you are kind of walking your path, you know, every mistake, every stumble, you're still on your path. So it doesn't matter. It's all part of your journey. But it is useful to remember you can have fun with it. You can mess it up. You can, you know, it's fine. You know, it's going to be fine. We're working our path, and that's the important thing, not getting it perfect. Yeah. Thank you for that, because so often we feel that we need that permission to make mistakes, to stumble on the path.
Yes. Yeah.
And you mentioned yoga, which is a big part of what you do, yoga for witches. And how does this relate then to the healing and the gathering around the hearth fire, do you think? It pinged into my mind a little earlier when I was talking about this idea of women's intuition, empathy as being powers. And actually, I love finding connections with things. And it's like, gosh, you know, how things weave together so beautifully in cultures around the world, like hiding things in food. So with yoga, one of the first kind of the foundational text of yoga was someone called Patanjali, and he wrote a guidebook about this practice of yoga, this practice of coming together in union with your body, your mind, your soul, your heart. And a huge percentage of the book, which actually is really interesting, a lot of books don't talk about what a huge percentage of the Yoga Sutras that Patanjali wrote about is something called the siddhis. And to him, these were attainments, these were skills. But to a witch or a woman looking at them, these skills are things like intuition, empathy, the ability to connect to someone else, to read someone's mind. And it was really interesting when he speaks about the siddhis as skills. He says, you know, these are not
these are not supernatural things. This is not kind of otherworldly things. This is part of you. This is normal skills that we've just lost. And yoga can help you reattain and reconnect to these things so that you have this beautiful power of being connected with other people, with being connected to yourself. And to me, that is that's it, isn't it? That's magic. That's witchcraft. That's the power of being a woman and being lost to these things that are both, at the same time, both the kind of the simplest, the most mundane, everyday things, but also absolutely connected to magic and huge power. You know, intuition is that whole scale. So things like that in the old yoga texts were like, wow, they totally get it. They know magic. They know this ancient practice of magic. And they're just the way that it's, you know, everyone has a slightly different way of looking at these universal powers. So I guess that was the beginning. And I was like, wow, okay, I can connect yoga and witchcraft together. So that was the beginning of it, which was great fun. I have it here, actually. Yoga for Witches. This one's an utter mess because I've got all the things in it. But yeah, and I sent, that was the foundation of the idea. And then I sent just 2 really crappy chapters and the title to Lucy at Womancraft. And there was like a deadline coming up and I just had a tiny bit of it. And I thought, right, I'll just send it and hope for the best. And luckily she loved it. So she was like, the title alone's good. If the rest is crap, it doesn't matter. We'll start with a good title and we'll go from there. But yeah, and then writing it was part of my journey, kind of exploring this idea of how different cultures explore this idea of magic, this idea of intuition and connection. And also, I suppose, kind of my journey of weaving these things together as I was, bless you. I was not sure if that was a sneeze or a cough, but I'll say bless you. Sneeze. Oh yeah, and then it's that journey of kind of weaving together and bringing into harmony my culture with a culture that is not mine. And I think that's, you know, it's more relevant than it's ever been, I think, with, you know, this, you know, shining a light on things like cultural appropriation. But it's that idea of kind of exploring something from a place of, you know, humility and honesty and openness. And, you know, I would never claim to have, you know, any native Hindu origins because I don't, but I can, with an open heart, say, you know, I love this practice and I'd love to share it with you, but also I'm going to show you some of the kind of practices from my culture and show you how you might want to weave them together in something that maybe feels more authentic to you or feels more connected to you or is just offering an idea to you that actually you can take these practices and you can make them work for you, and that could be different for absolutely everybody. So that idea that, you know, it takes work, and it does take work to find these things that work for you, and it can take time to find those connections for yourself, but ultimately you're going to end up with your path, with your map, and that's good.
Yeah, and as you say, it's a beautiful journey of connecting different cultures and with the open heart and mind that we have. And I think so much more now, I feel it's almost like there's a thirst. People are thirsting for this connection to our own roots.
Yeah.
You know? So it's lovely how over the course of this conversation you've shared from like the moment of getting your DNA test, you know.
I know, it's like that I was little and then
to where that's led as well. I think there are so many ways in that we can begin to reconnect with our own roots of what we feel we can relate to as well.
Yeah, I think that the thirst for it, I think is, yeah, you've nailed it there with that word, that thirst for it. I think, you know, things go in cycles and such, and certainly things have probably been, maybe we arrived at this point quicker because of things like lockdown and such. But I think a lot of people are suddenly thinking, God, I'm tired. I'm tired of seeking bigger houses and more stuff. And I'm tired of competing for social media presence. I'm tired of, you know, competing for status or that next job promotion. And actually, tired of trying to expand out and trying instead, actually, maybe I want to draw in and work with this and find my connections here, rather than trying to, find kind of meaning in things or status and that kind of thing. So I think it's great that we've got to this point. We've been pushed here a little quicker because of things. But I think, with all these shops, closed and things, it's like, how often do we really need to go shopping? How much stuff do we really need? Is that bringing us happiness, or is it an inside job?
Yeah, and I fully agree. I think lockdown and this awful pandemic has speeded this up of knowing, for people that want to choose to start looking within, reconnecting with ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share in relation?
It's been a journey, hasn't it? It's been some ups and downs.
Jordy. Or anything you've got coming up that you want to share with listeners?
So I showed you Yoga for Witches. I also have Yin Magic. So Yin Magic came out on Halloween, on Samhain. So that was, not even a month ago. It's time is strange at the moment. I can't get a grasp of it. So Yin Magic is here, which is very exciting. And I suppose I was talking about kind of yogic philosophy and how it can connect to this idea of our path. And Yin Magic, I suppose, is looking, again, at a different culture. We're looking at ancient Chinese and Tao philosophy, the beauty of Yin Yoga, which is an incredibly slow, very inward focused practice. So it really kind of supports this journey of drawing inwards, of being okay with being slow, with being still, with being quiet, which again is something we sometimes need to relearn and reconnect to. So that's been a real lovely journey, as we've all had to learn to be a little bit more still, perhaps, or just to, be in a different kind of way. So that's lovely.
And I love that title as well, Yin Magic, because for me that's been a huge part of my journey as well, and leaving corporate, and my whole mantra was around slowing down to become more present, and then discovering yin and letting her in and all of that. So it's so important. Yeah, gorgeous. And would you like to say anything about your free gift for people?
Ooh, yes. So I've created a meditation that's called, if I can remember, The Witch, the Waxing Moon, and the Night Garden. And as part of the kind of the story journeys I've done kind of the lunar cycles, because I think connecting to the moon is wonderful. And also this idea of story journey meditation is something I've been working with much more in the last year. And I think it's beautiful to read, it's beautiful to go to lectures, it's beautiful to watch films about witches and magic and goddesses and history and things. But to do it in meditation is just another way of kind of experiencing a goddess or a lunar cycle. And I think it's a really nice way to kind of maybe switch off a little bit and just to feel a little more the kind of the journey without any kind of expectations. So the story journey meditation is my new favorite thing. So I hope that everyone enjoys the meditation. And you kindly already shared my website, and there's lots more on there. So there's lots of free offerings. I think it's really nice to just be able to kind of dive in and try some things without kind of any pressure, and just kind of explore the things that work for you. I think that's lovely.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. And I actually did your story meditation yesterday, so it was just so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Letting go and walking with you and your voice and story was really, really gorgeous. So yeah, recommend viewers to try that out, and that will be on your speaker page.
Oh, wonderful. Excellent.
Along with your website, and where people can get your books as well. So thank you so much. Any other final words before we wrap up?
I should come up with kind of a really sensible closing mantra, shouldn't I? But just, you know, the whole summit, it's going to be a beautiful journey. So, you know, I would thank anyone joining for the summit to enjoy the journey, to know that, you know, nothing has to be perfect. We're just going to take the bits that inspire you, you know, tend those little embers, tend those little sparks that speak to you. And then you can build your own hearth fire of magic and inspiration.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. It was so lovely speaking with you. And for everyone watching, we'll see you again soon.